Hello, my name is Geogen and welcome back to World of Tanks. I'm doing another tank review today, and this is requested, I believe, a little while ago, and it was on that video where I said, what kind of tanks are you interested in? And this was the last one of those three, and it's the T20 medium tank for the Americans. So, it's not a tank I really enjoy playing, but it does have its strengths, as most tanks do, unless you're playing it freely. But we'll go through the stats, we'll go through the guns, and do all that jazz, and then we'll have a replay showing it in some gameplay. So to begin with, it has 1100 hit points, and at tier 7 I believe that's one of the highest. The Germans, I know the VK 3002DB has 1250 with its upgraded turret, and 1150 with its standard turret, so that is one distinct feature about the Germans, is they get more in terms of their health pool. I don't think I have any other tier 7 mediums, I'll just check. Oh no, I do have a Panther. A Panther as well has 1300 hit points, so a little on the low side compared to the Germans, but 1100 hit points is still a healthy amount. Anyhow, it weighs 31 tons in my configuration with the equipment and all the ammunition and all that jazz, and has a 560 horsepower engine, which means it can shift around pretty quickly. It has a top speed of 56 km an hour and a traverse speed of 37 of the tracks, with 42 degrees of the turret, which is good. You can reacquire your targets very quickly. The turret traverse is much better than that of the track traverse, but if you use both in tandem, you'll be able to do good things with it. The armor I'll talk about in a moment, but as a general statement, it's pretty bad. And the gun I'll talk about as well later on. 390 meters view range is very good, with a 615 signal range at tier 7. Again, no one really cares, but that's okay. If we look at the Panther, you have 10 meters better view range, but a worse signal range. So, enough of looking at the stats in the garage. We'll look on Tanks GG for the armor and the gun characteristics. So here we are on Tanks GG with the T20 and its armor model viewer, and hopefully that funky music I use is kicking in right now. Tell me if that music is annoying, but I quite like it, because as you know, talking about stats without some music can be a little bit dull. But anyhow, on the right hand side we have our spaced armor values, and on the left we have normal thickness values. So at tier 7 you're a medium tank, so you're not going to have good armor, but the armor on this is very poor indeed. It's much like the armor of, well, the armor layout rather, of a T21 light tank. They're both based on the same chassis, but this has slightly thicker armor, but it's still not brilliant, especially when you get into tier 9 games. So the whole armor is 63mm sloped back. At this angle you're going to get about 80, and that's pretty damn bad. Tier 3s can penetrate you with their APCR ammo, and tier 4s can penetrate you as well. This machine gun area, if we look at a visual model when it loads, here we go. This machine gun area, when you hit it flat on, it's 64mm, but if you hit it up here, it jumps up to 200. It's just because of the angle, and you're going to be very unlucky if you bounce right there. The sides, 50mm and flat, easy penetration, and the rear 38mm, flat and thin. Moving on to the armor of the turret. The armor of the turret is 88mm thick, but there is some sloping and angling going on, so it can jump up to around 120 up here, 130 even. But it's mostly anywhere between about 80 and 100mm. Around the gun, of course, it has a nice amount of spaced armor, so it can jump up to 150 to 109mm, as you can see. Basically, don't shoot it in the gun. It's pretty standard for most tanks, but you are going to penetrate in this area. The rest of it, easy penetrations. And even if you want to hit it in the turret, the cupola is weaker at 63mm. There is some sloping and angling, of course, but it is weaker. However, the turret cupola is not a huge target, so just shoot it in the front of the turret. It's not going to bounce too much. The side of the turret, again, 63mm, some angling. May jump it up to around 70. The back of the turret is the same as the side of the turret, and at that angle it was 100mm, but again it's flat, so 63. The moral of the story is the armor isn't brilliant. So we'll take a look at the gun. Here we go. With the fully upgraded configuration, you get a 90mm gun, and at tier 7 that's pretty good. We're going to put on my configuration, so we got this, and I believe we have a vertical stabilizer. So our DPM has now jumped up to 1815, 240 average damage, 160 penetration, we'll talk about that in a moment. And it takes just under 8 seconds to reload with 7.5 rounds a minute. 2.1 second aim time, 0.36 accuracy, pretty decent. Gun depression, it's only 5 degrees apparently. Jumps up to 10 over the sides. So it has poor frontal gun depression, but good over the side and rear of the tank. Which is a bit bizarre because American tanks generally have good gun depression over the front, but as you can quite clearly see, it has very poor gun depression over the front, but the sides and rear have good gun depression. Power to weight ratio I didn't talk about, but it's okay, it's not brilliant. But you can move around the battlefield quite quickly. So there you go, that's the gun. It does have some rather nice armor piercing composite rigid ammunition though, which has 243mm penetration. And I would advise you carrying that in any game you play in this vehicle. Let's get back to the game and take a look at the stock module grind. So we're back in the garage to take a look at the stock grind. So, as you can see, this is the research tree and you have several weapons to choose from. Now, at stock you have a 76mm gun, which you can upgrade to a slightly improved 76mm gun, and then you have to upgrade the turret, and then you can have a choice of 2 guns. You can use this derp gun that's used way down on the tier 5 medium tank, the Sherman. But I wouldn't advise using that at all, especially when you're in tier 9 games. And then you have this 90mm gun M3. So you're going to have to spend a little time grinding some research. Unless you already have this unlocked from the T29, which I had, and the M6 even, then it's not going to be too bad for you. You have to get the turret, of course, which will cost you 8,000 in research EXP, which is okay. And you can also have the engine down here unlocked from the T25 AT or the T25/2 or the T21. So a lot of these modules are shared. The stock gun has 128 penetration, 115 damage, poor accuracy, okay aim time. I would advise using quite a few premium rounds, especially in tier 9 games, or for experiencing your way over to this gun. So the stock grind is okay. Things do get better in terms of your firepower. Having 240 average damage is pretty nice. But as you're going to see, the gun itself is rather underwhelming unless you use APCR ammunition. So after all that, the last thing to talk about is the crew skills, and standard, use repairs as your first skill. Following that, you could probably use something like clutch braking or the smooth ride to make the gun better on the move. And yeah, it's a pretty standard medium tank crew. Obviously, brothers in arms if you really like this tank, but as you can probably tell by now, I am not a fan of it. So, after all that, we're gonna jump into the game now and have a look at a T20 playing against tier 9 opponents. So here we are in the T20 on, what's this map called? I have to check. It's called Serene Coast, of course it is. And we're in a tier 9 game. There's 3 tier 9s on each side. We have an E75, they have an E75. They have 2 tier 9 tank destroyers and we have 1. And then we also have a 254E1. Back to the T20 though, you can see the speed is pretty good. We're up to almost 60 kilometers an hour, which is sort of light tank speed really. But it does drop down, of course, when you go up an incline. But as you can still see, we're still going much quicker than that I3 behind us and all of those other tanks as well. So we see a T-34-3, the statistically good player on the enemy team. Let's see if we can get some side shots into him. We just have to wait around a little bit. Nope. That was his turret, and the rest of his hull was behind a rock. So with 160 penetration with the standard rounds, you're not going to go through any Soviet-like turret armor, even though that's a Chinese vehicle. If I'd loaded one of those APCR rounds, it's likely I would have penetrated his turret. That's something you're going to see later on in this replay, where I make quite a few mistakes and I should have been firing APCR from the beginning of the engagement. So there's a KV-5, there's loads of other targets over there as well. And the KV-5 is distracted by other people. So we see an AMX AC-46. That was a poorly aimed shot, it probably hit him near the gun mantle. I'm aiming for the cupola, that's where the weakness of the frontal armor is on those tank destroyers of the French line, from tier 7 all the way up to tier 10. I mean the tier 6 one, the ARL V39. That's a bit of a joke, that tank, in terms of its armor. It does have a very good gun though. But I digress. Looking for another shot. And that one surprisingly goes in. Probably does deviate quite a lot to where I intended to hit him. Shell was a bit slow. And we have loaded some APCR, I've just noticed. So the shot probably didn't go for the weak spot, it just went straight through the armor of that tank. Because these APCR rounds with 243 penetration just butter everything you see, pretty much. Yep, 243. But now you can see I'm shooting at the back of the KV-5. And I'm thinking maybe I should shoot him in the hull, where the hull is weaker. Nope. And I continued to do this for some time, just thinking that was an unlucky bounce. And I do manage to get a penetration and set him on fire. Now I think the KV-5 has some spaced armor on the rear, where there's these 2 bars covering the hull. And in between those 2 bars is where I can penetrate. But with the poor, well, it's not brilliant accuracy, it's not like a British or a German gun. I think it's 0.36 accuracy. The chance of me hitting that shot repeatedly is quite bad. Side shots on that AC-46 are likely to go in, well, almost 100% of the time. I think it only has 40mm of side armor, and 160, as you can tell, overmatches that quite a lot. The one thing I don't like about the T20 is the fact that the reload is so cripplingly slow compared to that of a T43 or a Panther. The Panther and the Comet and the T43, those 3 vehicles have 85mm guns or 75mm guns, and they fire very quickly indeed, especially the Panther and the Comet. The Panther and the Comet can fire a shot every 3 or so seconds, 3.5 seconds, whereas the T43 can fire a shot every 4.5 seconds. Side of the hull of this T43 is an easy pen, and he misses a shot, we go all the way round, because we don't want to be firing a KB5 from the front. Even so, we can't penetrate his side armor with a normal round, and now I'm loading APCR again. You may call me a gold spamming noob, but I would agree with you in this case, because there's not a lot of chance of me penetrating. Just going to pause it here and take off the HUD and explain what I was on about earlier with the KB5. As you can see, it has this bar effect, and I think just here it is weaker, because you can see the metal becomes thinner than this upper section. Or it may have just been RNG. Or lastly, I might have hit him down here, where there isn't as much armor covering the back of the tank. Anyway, back to me in the T20. He's still up. We still got the gold rounds loaded. We're getting shot from the front, but we need to deal with this guy before he kills us. And we plant a shot into the top of the cupola. You can see we've been shot 3 times and all of our health is just evaporated. Because, like I said in the garage, you see the whole armor is very ineffective. I know we're a tier 7 medium, but it is very frustrating, especially when you're in a tier 9 matchup such as this. If I was in a Panther, I may have been able to bounce a couple of normal AP shots, depending on what target was firing at me. But because we have APCR firing at us, you know, pretty standard, then we aren't going to bounce anything at all. Unless RNG smiles upon us, which is very rare. That AC-46 is still up. We've only done around 1200 damage, Panther. We ignore him and go for the low health AC. But as you can see, we just bounce again, and I'm loading the gold again. And he goes down. And we managed to evade the Panther 88's pretty decent weapon. And we keep him spotted for an Object 704 to take him down. Now all the enemy have left is a Jagdtiger, a Black Prince, and a Speerpanzer 1C, or an SP-1C. And now we're rolling up again. I will give the T20 the fact that it does have good mobility and very good APCR ammunition, and in some circumstances okay AP ammo. But most of the time it's pretty frustrating playing this vehicle, at least in my experience. There are probably players out there with legendary stats in this. In fact, I think I saw someone with 3 marks of excellence playing in his T20. And I thought, how can you tolerate this vehicle unless he just exclusively fired APCR? Probably managed to take out that Jagdtiger, or the team does anyway, and we rush our shot on that Speerpanzer. Don't really want to get shot because we will be killed by that guy. He has a very nice 90mm? I think it's a 90mm. So we do blind fire the bush, but the shell goes to the right, and you see he's still on the same health. We take more time to aim that shot, and we kill him. Or rather, take out 200 of his remaining health. And that is game over. We managed to do 1947 damage in a tier 9 game. So you can see that the mobility is good. The gun can perform okay. The APCR, however, is a lot more necessary in most scenarios. But anyhow, I will show you the post-game results for this game. So here we are with the post-game stats for the T20 on the Serene Coast. It was only a first class, 5 for effect, so we did more damage than our hit points, which I aim for with most of my vehicles in each battle. 34,000 credits earned, almost 45,000, 3,266 experience earned for a ×2 first win of the day. Team score, we came second on experience, which was surprising. But then again, being in a tier 9 match and doing quite a lot of damage, more than a tier 8 here, more than this E75. Yeah, very surprising, but still a very mediocre game for me. On the enemy team, we had this T-34 free that we saw well, towards the beginning, who did some good work. On our team, this IS-3, well, it was in an IS-3. Speaking of IS-3s, we do have a good IS-3 replay coming up. I don't know when, but it will be coming up soon. Shots fired 23, 19 hits, and 10 penetrations. So that's me being a complete noob firing armor-piercing rounds when I should have been firing APCR at the beginning of the engagement with the KV-5. And of course I was fighting quite a well-angled opponent from a distance in the form of the AMX AC-46, which has 120mm of upper armor, I think, upper plate armor, frontal upper plate armor, and it's sloped back much like a Jagdpanther, so the effective thickness is somewhere probably in the region of 180. So yeah, I should have been firing a lot more AP. Damage, as I say, almost 1950, some of which was done from more than 300 meters away. We got hit 3 times and each shell penetrated, of course. 2 of them were APCR rounds, but even if I was shot with AP, it would be most likely a penetration regardless. We spotted 1 enemy vehicle, and we damaged 5 overall and destroyed 2. And then almost 600 spotting damage. And as you can see on the right hand side, we spent almost 7,000 credits on repairs and a huge amount on ammunition, only making 1,000 profit. I do not like this vehicle. You may like the vehicle, but it may well be expensive for you. And you can see the breakdown of the experience down below. So there we are, my review on the T20 Tier 7 American medium tank. Not my favourite vehicle in the game, for very good reasons. Horrendously poor armour, not very high hit pool, the gun is... it's okay if you fire... well, it's amazing if you fire exclusively APCR. But 160 standard penetration is pretty low. I know the Russians and the Comet have less penetration, but if you compare it to that of a Panther, which has almost 200 penetration with its standard rounds, there's no contest. The accuracy of the gun is also subpar. It's just not good at all, especially in a tier 9 game when you just get hit by a Waffenträger of some sort, and it takes off half or more of your hit points. Usually about 60% of your hit points go if you get hit by a Panzer IV Waffenträger. So, not my favourite vehicle in the game. It has some decent qualities. The speed, of course, is good. The speed and mobility is good. The camera rating, I don't know. It may well be better than that of some tier 7 mediums. Definitely better than that of a Panther. The Panther is huge in comparison to this vehicle. But anyway, that was my review on the T20. Does anyone have any thoughts on what I've been saying? If you do, please be sure to leave a comment down below. And additionally, if you liked the video, please be sure to do that as well. And if you're feeling extra adventurous, hit the share button on the bottom left of this video in order to help me out a little bit if you feel like doing so. Of course, you don't have to, but if you did, I would be much appreciative. So, as always, I've been Geogen, this has been the T20 review in World of Tanks, and I'll see you chaps and chapettes in the next one.